something that's a behavior that a lot of people deal with, and a lot of circumstances that a lot of dogs find stressful. And that is when something novel happens, what should they do? And in this case, this is their owner. These two dogs are male and female adult dogs owned by an experienced handler. When a person shows up and the dog has a relationship with a person, there's a lot of anticipation. The dogs don't necessarily know what the person's going to do, and that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's something new and it's novel, and LGDs are bred to be sensitive to what's novel. There's some expectation here. There's some learned relationship with the owner and the dogs. In this circumstance, to give you a little bit of a clue, this video is a reach out for a little support about how to have these two dogs be not quite so bouncy and difficult to deal with as the owners come in and out of the gate. These dogs are really well managed dogs, so what they're doing here is not a result of anything bad or anything neglectful. It's just that this can be a charged situation for dogs. So I have not watched this whole video. I stopped it and decided to do this with it. Instead, it's often nice for me to view things for the first time in real time. So I decided to talk about this in the way that I am, because what I first see in this video, and I have a little bit of a heads up because this is Chris. Chris is reaching out because he's concerned about this, and he's been through the course, and he knows that if he's got the right tools, he can help support his dogs and himself. So he's moving towards these dogs with a little bit of caution. His wife is videoing behind, so doing anything on camera is, not a whole lot of fun, so I can see that in his body language. And the dogs know what's going on. So these dogs know that his wife is back here, Chris is walking up, things are a little staged, a little slower, so it's a heads up. This dog, I don't know whether that dog is comfortably waiting over there or what that dynamic is, because I haven't been able to watch yet. But watch this dog. Now, what's interesting about this, in the first little bit that I saw when I watched this, is how many stress behaviors I see in this dog as Chris walks up. Now, you say stress behaviors, that isn't bad necessarily. It's informative. A dog that thinks it's just status quo, hey, we're hanging out, will not show those same behaviors. This dog is anticipating what's going to happen, but not in a joyful, loose kind of a way, in a little bit of an anxious way. So let's take a look at what those stress behaviors look like, because they're subtle and they're easy to miss. And what I would be looking for is to create a situation through training, through a learned history, that when my dogs watch me walk up, I want them to drop into an operant frame of mind. I want them to know what they need to do to get my hands on them, which is what they want. I want them to know when I come out of a field with dogs, or even walk to a fence, it's orchestrated dance steps. These dogs need to feel like they have some control over their world, and they need to be able to anticipate and feel like they are managing every situation. So when I show up and I know that there's a big need from the dogs to be social with me, and I'm about to walk in their field and they know it, and no matter how much relationship I have with the dogs, they own those fields, and so they're watching to see what I'm going to do in their environment. So all that stuff. So this dog is being a manager. If dogs understand exactly how that interaction around a gate will happen every single time, and what they can do about it, what they can do to be reinforced tactily, verbally, or whatever, or what is going to slow down the process. And part of what I see in this dog is he's not real sure what's going on. Now this may be because there's a camera here videoing this, but in this snapshot circumstance, which is all I have when I look at videos, it's just a little snapshot. Behavior is contextual, so I don't know what happened just before or just after. Chris may have been in and out of this field 50 times by the time they decided to pull out a camera and take a look. I don't know. So my job And your job in working with the dog is right here. Look at the snapshot, be present. Video is really, really helpful. And then when you're out of the situation, play it back in your head and take a look at what the context was, what happened before, and how you might have set the dog up differently when you're walking into a situation. So Chris knows all this. He's staged this for me to take a look at it, but those are things that are broadly valuable for owners to know how to do. So watch this dog and see if you can spot the stress behaviors, and I'll stop as I see them. Right there. That dog barked at Chris. That's an alert bark. I've never had my dogs alert bark to me. I've had them be happy and cheerful, but I've never had them alert bark. Look at his eyes. I don't know if this is Artemis or, all of a sudden I can't remember the other dog's name. He's got male and female dogs, and I can't tell who that is. But look at this posture. This dog, if I saw that posture and I had a dog walking up, oh, how do I want to put that? That's not a soft posture. Look at the shape of the eyes. Look how much of the sclera is showing. Look how tightly closed that mouth is. Look how tight this body is. That head is not low and soft. It's sticking straight out there. That dog's a little bit tight and stiff. This dog back here that's lying down and watching is not unaware. This dog is making decisions about this, and I don't have enough information at this point to know what it means. But they're both very engaged, and I don't have enough read on that one. But look at this dog. That's really interesting. I am here to tell you that those dogs love Chris. They have been gently managed. They are beloved dogs. So the anxiety that this dog is showing, or his or her inclination to manage the situation, is really, really interesting. So what I see here is a dog that's showing some concern. What is about to happen? I just look at that, and just look at that dog's eyes, mouth closed, the tightness in the body that you can see, the carriage of the head, the ears are low and flat. It's a really interesting thing. So we'll let this play out a little bit. So that slow tail wag, sorry about that, dogs of my own. That slow tail wag is not a friendly tail wag. That dog, or that tail wag, God, I'm sorry. Hey guys. That is part of this whole posture. That tail wag is a little bit of it's a warning tail wag. It's a little bit of it's not a friendly tail wag. Tails wagging does not mean that a dog wants you to come and see. It's communication, but it doesn't mean I love you, come close. This dog is barking now. Dog's body is low. I don't know enough about that dog to know how the dog is feeling, but barking instead of standing loosely and softly with the low, slow tail wag and eyes blinking, mouth open, head turned away slightly, head turned down, soft body, soft approach. That would be a confident body language for somebody walking in the field. This is not. It's very interesting to me. So there, that dog flashed into, that's Chris, that's my friend. He flashed into soft, and then he went back to a little bit of concern, but not as far back. So this dog is managing it a little bit better, and Chris is very aware of his dogs. He's walking laterally to the fence, which really is helpful to dogs. He's not doing a direct approach with his hand out anymore. He's gotten closer, and he's moving laterally, which allows this dog to breathe a little bit, think about it a little bit, and be softer. I know this dog is not afraid of Chris, so it's not, I won't make assumptions about why the dog's body language is what it is, but take a look at it. It's really clear. This dog's turned its head away, still barking, still low. That is an appeasement behavior. That is, I want everything to be okay. This dog's more direct gaze. He's being the manager more, or she, than the dog behind, but they're both really affected by this. That's softer. That's a friendly tail wag, that low and slow. This dog's body is looser. That alert bark. The alert bark in itself, hey, the alert bark in itself doesn't necessarily mean that that the dog isn't happy to see Chris. Some dogs are really, really vocal. Maybe this dog barks at Chris a lot. But the dog went from that bark to softness. This is softness. And Chris has done the same thing. Chris is down and low. Now look at what this dog's body is doing. The head is down. The eyes are large. No sclera showing. The mouth is loose. The whole frame is looser. This soft tail wag, it may look like the same tail wag, but the rest of the dog's body is not doing the same thing, so it means something different. This dog back here has got its eyes on Chris again. So feeling a little bit safer in looking at the situation. That's beautiful. So Chris is low, he's lateral to the fence. This dog feels very comfortable coming up to see him. This is a soft body. So if you look at this body and then you look back at what you had before, wasn't soft. This dog is more comfortable. Now that, I mean, this has gone back to a pretty alert dog. The eyes are better. The body carriage is a little bit better. But it's still pretty dynamic for this dog. Interesting. Let's keep watching. Now, that dog knows how to mand, and he knows that he's going to be reinforced if he mands. That's an offered sit. And behaviors that dogs know well, in times of stress or insecurity, they will offer a behavior that has a strong reinforcement history that they absolutely know they're perfect about. You know, it's a way to say, I don't know what's going on, but if I give you this, I know that you'll do this. And so it's a way for a dog to take control back a little bit and keep themselves safe by offering something to someone they have a relationship with that they know has a history of always going well, and a history of the dog being able to manipulate the person that's being manded too. If I do this, that person will behave in a certain way. Person will say hi, will stop, do treat, whatever, but it's a way for that dog to control Chris's body. Flips right back out of it and goes to tail chasing. And that is absolutely an anxiety behavior. It's a way for dogs to self-soothe. Barking is also to some degree. So he tries it, and then he pops right back out of it. Chris is still moving in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense to these dogs because he's an efficient worker kind of a guy. He runs his property. He's more common for him to walk out, go into the field, and get something done. So hanging out here like he is a little bit worrisome for these dogs because it's not the way normal way that Chris interacts. And just that itself may be the reason that these two dogs are showing the stress behaviors that I see. We've got a little bit in there. Again, I don't know what it all means. I'm only identifying the pieces of behavior I see in these dogs. Walking laterally is a great way for Chris to offer some support to these dogs, turning his back to them, but not in an aversive way, just kind of breaking his sight line. This dog yawning, that's a stress behavior. It is a behavior that a dog uses to kind of help him relax. There's another behavior that's really commonly understood, and that's a shake off. So this yawn is the dog attempting to let go of some stress. He's soft enough to open his mouth, but watch the video because there's more than one yawn, and this is not a sleepy dog.
Oh boy.
So that looks pretty good. Chris got an invitation to come in just a little bit, the breaking the sight line the dog did with Chris is interesting. We'll just let this play forward and I'll stop talking for a minute. Now that is a dog that's asking Chris to interact with him. So this dog is not worried about Chris's body being close to his, lack of control of Chris's hands on him. The dog is welcoming. Chris is kind of over his head and behind him. Both are things that I wouldn't do with a dog that was worried about me, but this dog put himself there, and Chris did too, and this whole soft body, that dog is asking for that. He's got his feet on the ground, which is something that Chris values, and there's a lot of reinforcement history for. So this is a more confident dog than what the body language showed me before Chris walked in. This dog is more comfortable now. Kind of rolled sideways, a little bit of flirty, not pushing in with the two dogs, which is interesting. And remember that this is only a snapshot. Because I know that Chris has shared with me that both dogs being at the gate can be whole lots of fun in other circumstances. So that's a really nice way for Chris to check in with that dog. Just spend a minute. As long as the dog's feet are not up, that means the dog can maintain the learned behavior that he knows Chris likes in the time frame that they're working together. So as long as that dog can be successful at being loose and slow and down, then it's the right thing to do. But there is an expiration date with that kind of thing. With a dog that has shown himself to be uneasy, has shown himself to be anything but just, you know, loose and smiling, and he's not going to be able to do this for very long. And as an owner, staying there in that situation with that dog for very long is going to set that dog up to ramp back up and show more concern and more anxiety, because the dog's feeling kind of spring-loaded. This dog is not sleepy. That dog is spring-loaded also. We just haven't seen what that dog wants to show us. But this dog is going to be able to do this for a short period of time, and then he's going to blast right out of that into behaviors that Chris is not so fond of. And those are puppy behaviors, and dogs do puppy behaviors because that's their baseline. That's what they were born with and understand best, and it's the default. If they're not sure about how to manage themselves based on operant behavior, learned reinforcement history with behaviors that they've learned and an owner likes, they go back to their common language. And so when you see that, when you see puppy behaviors out of a dog that you have more learned history with, and you don't always get that behavior, when you do get those behaviors, it's a clue to take a look and pay attention to what you can do to make that dog feel serene and confident, because that's the way to change those behaviors. Any kind of trying to get the dog to stop those behaviors any way other than meeting the dog's needs and building comfort and confidence will make those behaviors more prevalent and that last longer and make the dog feel less secure about these kinds of interactions. So Chris has got this nailed. That dog's eyes are soft, body is soft. This one's being flirty over here. Now look what happens when Chris stops. The hands on the dog provide an anchor for the dog. The dog can rest into those hands and be easy under the hands because it's really obvious what's going on. The minute Chris takes his hands off, the dog goes back to exuberance, fast movement. Whether I still see anxiety in this situation, and it may be just that the dog's not sure what's going to happen. I don't know, and this dog still has not felt okay about standing up and saying hi. That dog loves Chris, so this is interesting. I know these two dogs don't duke it out and fight when Chris shows up either, but they have a dynamic with each other. And this situation, it could be that the next time Chris walks out, they're completely switched sides, and this dog's on the ground and this one's up. Don't know. I don't have that much information, but I know that this dog is continuing to be low, rolled over, more contact on the body. Those are really those behaviors are appeasement behaviors. This dog wants everything to be okay. Don't know whether the concern about wanting everything to be okay has to do with the dynamic with the other dog or with Chris. We don't know that. All we know is look at that dog and the kabing out of a learned stance to back to puppy, and this dog who has not gotten up softly and come over and gotten a cuddle next to his partner. It just means something, so pay attention to it. That tail wag of this dog is asking for Chris to come and take a look. Again, not confident enough to come and get Chris's attention, but that low tail wag with the head all sideways like that, that's please come and cuddle me. It's cautiously done by this dog, but that is what it means. Now, this dog has shown a bunch of anxious behavior here. Chris has gotten in, cuddled with the dog successfully. Then the dog got kabingy. Now we're at this posture. What do you know about dogs that put their feet on you? Almost always, it's a frontal assault. So stopping and looking at that dog is asking that dog to think and keep it together. Chris has got his hands low, his body is soft, he's talking to the dog, but it's a setup. Because that dog is not gonna, it's not setting the dog up for success, because what we know about the situation is that the dog is pretty, I'll use the word reactive for lack of a better label to hang on this. Hey guys! Sorry, my life with dogs. He's not coming from several minutes of calm behavior, so Chris can't afford to stand this way with him. So what I would have had Chris do instead, when he took his hands off of the dog who's got his brain about him and is on the ground and doing what Chris has taught him he likes, the way to set up the dog for success that's this kind of on edge is to walk briskly away and let the dog come up beside you, wiggling hands beside whatever, take a walk. Because that would diffuse this situation for the dogs. There's a big concentration of energy right there and expectations on everybody's part. If he comes in, he checks in with that dog and he goes and he walks the fence line, the dog is going to drop into, oh, this is a pattern of behavior that we know real well. And why would you walk a fence line? Not to teach the dog the perimeter. That is a misunderstood thing. If a dog is showing any kind of insecurity, if you move predictably, it allows the dog to relax because he can predict what you're doing, and that is a big deal to dogs. So if I'm working with a dog that is showing me any kind of, amp up, having a hard time keeping their brain about them, whatever, if I walk a fence line, they can expect me to keep going that way or that way. If I walk out across the middle, they're not sure where I'm going to go. And it's not a deal breaker, but it's less secure for the dog because it gives them less information about what I'm going to do next. So I would go to a fence line and I would walk an edge with these dogs, and I would stop when the dog was loose and soft, and if they weren't, I'd keep going. And if I had a bouncy dog next to me, I'd put a hand out to the left or to the right. These dogs have been taught to target. I'd wiggle my fingers, I'd get a nose under my fingers, I'd verbally mark and reinforce, yeah, good dog, let's go. And I would keep walking until those dogs settle down. The first 5 minutes or so of a novel situation is when dogs have the hardest time having their brains together. So if I know that I'm dealing with dogs that have a history of kind of losing it when I come in a gate, that's going to be the dance steps. So let's go forward. That bark, that bounce, those are, I don't know if I would call them anxious behaviors, but those dogs are not, they're not sublimely playing with each other. They're kind of binging off of each other a little bit. They're keeping their brains together pretty well, but they're still not loose and soft and confident, and I want to see that. So again, I would go walk. Not tragic here. The dogs are pretty okay, but just looking at the body language, that's what I would give the dogs so that they can enjoy having me around and having me a partner in their field and not out. And here's what we're going to go do today. We're going to go and be engaged in the property, moving around the property, rather than standing and having the dogs look at me wondering what their piece with me is. I want dogs to move quickly from orienting to me to back to work. And the way to plug them in to back to work is go move on the property. Every paw that an LGD puts down is, I own it, I own it, I own it, I own it. That floods them with happy hormones. It gives them confidence. So if I'm walking with them, then they're getting that reinforcement, chemical reinforcement. I've tied myself to it. It's a thing that I call a training triangle, which is the dog, what the dog is doing, and me. And I want to tie myself to things that the dog enjoys and that I want to see more of. So walking around knowing that LGDs have motor patterns that are very reinforced chemically by doing the movements. If I go and move that way with the dogs, we all win. And it's a sure thing for the dogs, and it makes it a lot easier for the dogs to manage themselves in the way that I like to be, have dogs be around me that are, you know, that's like more than 250 pounds of dogs there. It's nice to have some predictability in the situation. Those dogs are working hard for Chris. They're a little better off than they were when he first started. Softer, that little playful stuff, they're just softer now. They're just better. He's in, things are good. There goes Chris. He knows how to walk with those dogs. And that's the right way to deal with that. So, I hope that was interesting. Sorry, I got to figure out how to make the video stop because I'm not very good at that. So, the reason this video was shared with me was a discussion about how to help the dogs be easier when Chris walks in and how to make Chris' life easier when he walks in. Before we can talk about training, you know, active training decisions, I'm going to do this, the dog will do this. The first thing you have to do is what Chris has done here, which is why he did it, which is get a video of what it looks like for the dogs. It's very hard to know everything that I just learned from these dogs in real time. Playing a video back later and looking at it is the way to know. I'm sure that when Chris played that video back and watched it, he saw most of what I saw. So the first step in supporting these dogs and having them not be nuts at the gate is to create situations that show softness in the dog's body at the approach to the fence and being inside. So there are training options for that. The first thing that I would do with those dogs is do training behind protected contact, and that means that the dogs stay on the other side of the fence and I'm on the outside of the fence, and I would engage the dog's brain and I would move up and down the fence line, and we would do some things, and I'm not going to go into that now because this video will be way too long. Before I walked in with a field with the dog showing me those kinds of behaviors, I would engage the dog in a way that the dog looks confident, relaxes. I have some connection with the dog before I add complexity of actually walking in the field with them. So I hope this has been informative, a little bit long. Sorry about that. See you down the road.